Hi, I'm Baldur Brönnimann, and this is the Conducting Coaching podcast, where we talk about conducting from the inside. Hello and welcome back. Today we'll talk about commissioning new works. I think commissioning is not just one of the big pleasures of being a conductor, it's also a real privilege. Because very often you're not just in a position to program music, you're also in a position to get new music written. I think this is an essential experience for your performance groups, for your orchestras or your ensembles, but also for your public and for yourselves to connect with the music of our own time. When you commission, you play a small role in music history. You create something tangible and something that is going to stay. You help to get a new piece born, and you never know what's going to happen with a piece after. Once it's there, it's going to walk on its own. You're part of music staying in touch with our time, you support composers, and you give your performance groups an experience they'll never forget, which is to work with a living composer, to be part of the creative process, and to play and explore a piece for the first time. Whoever you work with, I think this is an essential experience for any musician that we all need more of. Now, one of the beauties of commissioning is that it's always a risk. You never know what you get. You never know how a piece is going to turn out, how it's going to work, etc. But this uncertainty or this risk is a fundamental experience. It's part of this active living relationship with music that we have to cultivate. And I think it's at the core of what music making really means. Now here I'll run you through some of the points I think are worth considering, because commissions come with a certain responsibility and also with certain logistics. There are things you have to think through well in order to make a commission really succeed and to work. I think sometimes commissioned works suffer from the fact that one doesn't consider enough the aspects around commissioning. I think there's a stark difference, for example, to the arts world, where people have a long and living history of commissioning, and there's also a lot of thought going into what makes a commission really succeed. In the classical music, sometimes I get the impression that either people are not fully behind it, or it's just something you have to do, or there's just a little bit of love missing, a little bit of connection to these new works. And then sometimes the commissioned works, because of a lack of maybe planning or strategy behind it, fall a little bit by the wayside, which I think is a shame. Just commissioning without giving something the necessary thought is not good enough. A successful commission needs your energy, your conviction, and careful planning. Now let's dive in. I think the very first thing to look at, if you're thinking about commissioning something, is what I just mentioned. It's the vision behind it all. Fundamentally, why you commission something. It's important to have your reasons clear in that sense. Maybe you want to expand the aesthetic horizon of your orchestra. Maybe you want to expose them to something they've never been exposed to. Or you want to do the same thing with the public. Maybe you want to present something they've never heard before, or give them a sort of a experience of sounds they haven't met before. You want them to meet a composer. You want them to realize that music is still an ongoing process, that the composition is still around and not just historically relevant. Maybe you want to support the creation of new repertoire. Maybe you want to support composers or create more pieces for your medium, or create new pieces for the sort of technical expertise that you have in your group, because maybe there's not so much around. All these can be valid reasons. Commissioning and the contact with new works is essential for everybody in music making. If it's kids, adults, amateurs, professionals, everybody. But let me make maybe just the example of our orchestra in Galicia in Spain regarding to what sort of strategy we have behind commissioning. This will be different for all of you, but this is an example of what our type of thinking when we commission music. We have contemporary music as a core element of our strategy. It's a publicly funded orchestra, so we see ourselves as partners in the creation of new significant repertoire. We do reading sessions for young composers every year. We have a composer in residence, and we commission 3 or 4 new works every year. In Galicia, historically, there were no orchestras before the 1990s, so consequentially, there's not much of a historic repertoire, and we, as a public institution, have to engage with that reality. And we have the remit to help to create something that represents Galicia here and now. When I say we have to, it's not like we have to. We really want to, because it's a great pleasure to have the composers around and to be able to talk to the public about the new pieces for the orchestra, to experience these new languages, have dialogues with the composers and so on. I think this is a great process. And for us, it's a little bit part of who we want to be as an institution and how we want to be seen from the outside. So these are the foundations of our strategy for commissioning. The society, which supports the orchestra, and the music scene, which needs the help in creating significant new works for orchestra. These are the sort of the important fields for us that define our mission in this whole process. And this will help us then to select the right projects or the right composers for what we feel we should contribute as an institution to the music life in Galicia. But this is just an example, of course. For you, it might be really different. Maybe you conduct a band or a choir somewhere and you don't have so many voices, or they're really limited in tessitura, or you can't do technically very difficult things. But you can still commission works, and I think it's very important that you do. All you need is composers who understand your circumstances and can do something meaningful for your group and your public. And then you will have great experiences. I'm making this example of a choir or a band because I often talk to conductors of youth orchestras, and they say like, yes, of course we can't because we have really limited technical abilities and so on. Of course you do, but the young musicians, they're not stupid. They can understand different aesthetics, and sometimes they're much better at assimilating different sounds and new artistic proposals than adults are. So make sure you use that. Make sure they get in touch with new works and commission new pieces. Right, and the next step is to look for a composer. There are many ways to do that. You might want to do an open call for projects. It helps you to find out who is there. It helps you to get to know people that you don't know, etc., to see what you could imagine fitting for your group. Or you might already know somebody who worked with people you know, or wrote for your medium before, and so on. I often ask around at the festivals or the conservatoires. I have contact persons that I really trust and that have their ears on the ground, just to see a little bit who are the up-and-coming, new and interesting people. But everybody will have their own networks, and there is a research to be done, which is part of your job as a conductor. Now, when you draw up your list and you look who's out there, make sure you don't impose your own criteria, because there are all sorts of composers there. The older ones, there younger ones, there men, there women, there people writing in all sorts of musical idioms. Contemporary music nowadays is such an open field. You have from the most diatonic, simple, minimalist music through to the most complex, microtonal, multi-layered or conceptual music and so on. Everything is possible. And I think this is a real richness. So make sure you don't forget that you're just the waiter that brings the food to the table. Don't let your subjective artistic preferences take the decisions for you. I have music that comes to me much easier than other types of music that I prefer to conduct because I understand it better, it speaks to me more. But why is that? It's because I already assimilated it. The first time I got in touch, maybe I also didn't understand a certain piece or the music of a certain composer. But because I wanted to let it in, I wanted to keep my horizon open, it became part of the music that means something to me. And it's important that this process goes on. I think it's a matter of professionalism and also of personal artistic growth as a conductor, that you keep your mind open for things you don't understand yet. The one thing I would say though is you might have to compromise in technical difficulty. We all have to do that, also in the professional music making world. But I would never compromise in aesthetic challenge, because usually it's the most radical pieces that made really an impact in music history. And as we said before, that the reason that somebody maybe can't play something technically doesn't mean that they can't understand. And the same goes for the public. Very often you do a concert where the most radical piece has the strongest impact. So make sure you don't just commission pieces that work already in the first rehearsal. Don't underestimate your musicians and don't underestimate the public. Giving people a real experience sometimes means that you need time and patience. But in the end, what takes a lot of effort also pays you back. So don't just go the easiest way and give them something to really open their perspective. Now, once you have a list of interesting composers or interesting projects, the next step is to think where a new commission will sit exactly in your programming. Find the right sort of program, or also the how it sits within a theme of a season that makes it a natural and an organic part of what you present. Now, when commissions get programmed, I think there's sometimes a bit of thinking or intellectual rigor missing. And consequently, they land just in any type of program without a natural reasons for them to be there. This reason to be there is very important, even more important for contemporary works than for historic works, because it's the first step for them to be taken serious and also to be seen that they simply continue the line of historic music into our time. Also look at it from the point of view of the public. If you play a new commission, people will have no idea what this sounds like. But programming a piece in a coherent and imaginative way will give the public a chance to make a first emotional or intellectual relation to a piece. It will build a small bridge that people can imagine something behind this all. And it is a first step in a new piece being successful. Thanks for listening. To send us your comments or suggestions, please write us a message on Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter to stay up to date with all the conducting coaching news and events.